Yeah, so good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our evening class today. We want to have a conversation around network security, and network security is a very important chapter for you guys, and this is because the whole chapter of cybersecurity, is a chapter that needs us to have some security skills. And this is because every network is insecure. In fact, someone recently marked that there are only two types of networks. One that has been hacked and people don't know, and one that has been hacked and people know. So that tells you that we can never say that a network is totally secure. There's always a weakness somewhere that can be taken advantage of. And today we are also going to have to understand and to learn some security terms to use. Okay. Yeah, the correct words to use when you are talking about cybersecurity. And it is important to note that wherever you are administering any network, your boss will always need you to provide some cybersecurity skills. And that's why this networking course, it cannot be complete without us having to learn some network security concept. And so to start us off, we have these are the objectives that we are going to have for today. So we'll explain how vulnerabilities, those are terms here, threats and exploits can be mitigated to enhance network security. So we'll describe the current state of cybersecurity and vectors of data loss, tools used by threat actors to exploit networks. The threat actors are actually the hackers, all right? We'll describe malware types, common network attacks, how these vulnerabilities within the IP protocol are exploited by threat actors, how TCP and UDP vulnerabilities are exploited by threat actors. Of course, we'll talk about different types of threat actors, of course, just to get a feel of who are they, what they do, and where are they found. We'll also describe some best practices of protecting our network, and finally, we'll describe common cryptographic processes used to detect data in transit. And so let's get to dive in this. There's a lot to learn here. And one thing I've always told people, when you want to become a cybersecurity specialist or a network security specialist, talking about cyber has something to do with the network or internet. And so you can never learn about security without talking about the network, because security is always about protecting the network devices, the network data, protecting the network, the people that use the network. So it's either the network, the people in the network, the devices in the network, and the data in the network. And so that's why you must understand your network. And today, look at how we are talking about IP vulnerabilities. How do you understand IP vulnerabilities if you don't know what an IP is? How do you understand, for example, TCP and UDP vulnerabilities if you have never studied about what TCP is and what UDP is? So that is how intertwined those concepts are. Now, before we continue, every time we talk about cybersecurity, especially if I'll have to demonstrate some tools here for you guys, all of you must abide by this ethical hacking statement. And this is like an oath you guys are taking. By the virtue that you're attending this class now, you are actually accepting to abide by this ethical hacking statement. And so I'm going to read it to you. So in this module, learners may be exposed to tools and techniques in a sandboxed virtual machine environment to demonstrate various types of cyber attacks. Experimentation with these tools, techniques and resources is at the discretion of the instructor and the local institution, which is Kenyatta University in this case. So if the learner is considering using attack tools for education purposes, they should contact the instructor prior to any experimentation. Why? Because unauthorized access to data, computer and network systems is a crime in many jurisdictions and often is accompanied by severe consequences, regardless of the perpetrator's motivations. It is the learner's responsibility as the user of this material to be cognizant of and compliant with computer use laws. So may God help you. So this is an oath you have taken. Please make sure you always abide by this. I will introduce you to some tools today, which I will be sharing with you. And I will be able to just help you. I mean, to you and just help you how to acquire them and how basically to use them. Okay. All right. So I think let's pick up from there and just continue. So let's move on to the current state of cybersecurity. So the current state of cybersecurity is such that we have so much automated tools which are available free online. Okay. And these tools are tools that can be used by anyone, including you and I, experienced or not experienced. And these tools, some people use them just to test if they can work. And some of those trials have taken down very critical infrastructure in big networks and systems. And these tools, they keep on evolving every time now and then. Okay. And maintaining a secure network will definitely ensure that the network uses network data and the network devices are safe and protected from any kind of malicious interest. And so it's important, whether you are the security administrator or the security intern or security cybersecurity expert, whether you're just a user of the network, it is important that you be aware of some security terms. And we have some in the table here. And you people being within this field of networking, I want to take you through some terms here. So we start with the first word, it's called an asset. So the word an asset in cybersecurity refers to anything that is of value to your organization. This includes the data within your organization. This includes the network devices and equipment. Any resources like network media, copper, fiber optic, wireless, including the people within the organization. All those are assets because they have value to the organization. Number two, vulnerability is a very common term in cybersecurity. So a vulnerability is basically any kind of weakness within your system or within your devices that can be taken advantage of. And this kind of weakness can be as slight as a weak password or no password at all, can be as slight as not having updated your antivirus software. It can be as slight as configuring a weak enable secret password or the line control password. All right. And it can be as slight as, uh, exposing your network, not having any firewall in the network. So any weakness within your system, that is a vulnerability. The next term is called threat. A threat is any potential danger to your assets. Okay, any kind of danger on your assets, we call that threat. So long as that danger can affect the functionality of your system or gadgets or assets, that is a threat. The word exploit, to exploit, basically to take advantage of. So this is just any technique that can be used to take advantage of a weakness in a system. So any kind of a mechanism or technique which can be used to take advantage or to leverage any weakness in a system, we call that an exploit. Mitigation, you'll meet this word a lot, mitigation techniques. To mitigate basically is to countermeasure or to reduce the likelihood of a threat or a risk, okay? And when you talk about mitigation techniques, these are ways of, putting down any preventive measures, that's it. And then finally, a risk. Now, it is funny that to define a risk, we are going to use the terms that we have already talked about up here. And so we are saying that a risk is the likelihood of a threat, potential danger. Likelihood, any potential danger to exploit, which means to take advantage of the vulnerability, the weakness of anything of value for an organization. And if that will cause some negative effect to the organization. So the likelihood of a threat to exploit vulnerability of an asset. So the likelihood of a potential danger to take advantage of a weakness in anything of value to the organization that will cause a negative harm to the organization. So those are some terms. Make sure, and you'll hear more in slides to come. But these ones should be very familiar to you every time you are in a cybersecurity environment. A vector basically is the path by which a threat actor can gain access to a system or a device. Okay, the path by which the threat actors are the hackers, how they gain access to the network. We have normally internal or external threats. Internal threats are the people you have within the organization. How are they malicious people? Are there employees who complain of low pay within the organization, and so they would like to cause some harm to the organization, either by spreading the organization crucial or critical passwords to people outside of the organization, or just doing things that are malicious to the organization. Those are internal threats. External threats, of course, these are still hackers who they can be able to hack into your database or your website or anything, but from the outside of the organization. Okay. Now, when a cybersecurity intrusion occurs, it leads to a lot of losses. Okay. And sometimes data, of course, is lost. Data can be stolen. And sometimes data is leaked. Some private, very confidential information is also leaked to the public. And this can lead to so many bad things, including the damage of your reputation. And you don't want to do that, because when your reputation is damaged, it means you actually lose a competitive advantage against your enemies or against your competitors. Or it can lead to loss of customers. If you keep money in a bank and the bank reports that millions and millions of dollars were stolen from them through hackers, you wouldn't be very comfortable continue to keep your money within that bank. You'll withdraw and probably try to move to a different bank, that which I mean, you might not know whether it's also secure or not. So loss of customers is a possibility. Loss of revenue. You take a lot of money, by the way, to recover from these breaches. You know, Kenya Airports Authority was hacked the other day. We have the Naivas supermarket was hacked the other day. One of the insurance company, I don't know that it was Jubilee or something, was also hacked into. And all these banks you see around, they have been hacked into, but why would they tell you? They don't want to lose your trust, So they use a lot of money to brand their name. Some of them have changed names. Some of them have tried to lure their customers or to just to assure their customers. So sometimes when you get very, informed clients, they'll take some legal action against you and you pay very serious fines and penalties in a court of law. So, and it's very costly, okay, to recover from some of these data loss. And that's why every organization needs to have some DLP, data loss prevention controls, that will be able to protect them from that. Now, some of the vectors or attack surfaces of data loss include things like, social networking or social media or email. We should not be exchanging very sensitive work email on our social media sites because the organization could lose data. Make sure that you don't use unencrypted devices. Devices need to be encrypted, especially if they are organizational devices. They must be encrypted either using a VPN or so. When you keep your data in the cloud, make sure that the cloud is validated using passwords and usernames, which are strong, it cannot be hacked into. Removable media is a very common way of losing data. Make sure that any data that is kept in a USB flash disk. It's easier for people always to forget their flash disk or removable media on cyber cafes when they go browsing or they go printing something, and there you go, they forget it there. When you have hard copy materials, make sure that you shred them to prevent anyone from ever accessing the content there. Improper access controls, make sure that you don't create weak passwords or passwords that can easily be guessed, okay? Because these ones can be easily hacked into. Now, like I said, a threat actor is actually a hacker. And we have two broad categories of threat actors, and we describe them by the color of the hats they put on their heads. So we have a white hat hackers, gray hat hackers, and black hat hackers. The white hat hackers, basically, these are the good guys. These are the cybersecurity professionals. They use their skills for good, for ethical purposes, and for legal purposes. Okay, and so they fix people's problems. The opposite of the white hat hackers are the black hat hackers, and these ones are the criminals. They act very unethically, and their intention is always to gain, and they do it for malicious reasons. Okay, and so white hat hackers, black hat hackers, they have the same skills. It is the intention that is different. Gray hat hackers are basically, these are individuals. They commit crimes, yes, but they are not doing it for personal gain or to cause damage. Okay. Sometimes a threat actor will realize or discover some weakness in your system. They wouldn't attack it themselves. They would actually sell that information to the black attackers or the white hackers. So they could be very, very helpful. We have more types of descriptions describing hackers. We have what we call script kiddies or amateurs. Mostly this could be just teenagers, young men and women, or they could be just older people, but very inexperienced about hacking. And they use readily available tools over the internet to cause some harm, not for profit. Sometimes it's for experimenting and learning. We have vulnerability brokers, and vulnerability brokers are like the white hat hackers. They broke vulnerabilities. They realize your system has a weakness. They can sell that information to the highest bidder, but they don't use it themselves. Hacktivists are very important. So the activists are actually, if you have heard of activists within our country, they agitate for the rights of others. Okay. And we also have activists within networking, and we call them hacktivists because these guys are actually also gray hat hackers. They protest against organizations, against governments, and they can cause some very bad things in terms of reputation. Sometimes they can leak very secretive videos or very embarrassing articles or videos or very sensitive information about some influential people. And they also perform network attacks. So they agitate for or protest for some comments or some people. Then we have the black attackers. We call them cyber criminals. They neither self-employed nor working for large self-organizations. And these are organized criminals. And then, of course, we have the state-sponsored. This could be white or black. And they're still government secrets. And they can be working for a certain government. And, like you've heard in the war between Russia and Ukraine, we've had wars between America and Russia. And it's important to note that the state-sponsored hackers, they work for an organization or they work on hire. You can hire them, work for you. They can do some spying on foreign governments, terrorist groups, corporate organizations, so on and so forth. Now, the cyber criminals operate a very, very well-doing economy that we call the black market or black web or dark web. And so the dark web has billions and billions of dollars that consumers even transact businesses there. So this underground economy, they buy and sell so many things, including botnet services, zero-day exploits, attack tools, bank trojans, keyloggers, and in most cases they use the digital currency like bitcoins to operate so that they cannot be traced in any manner. For the hacktivists, we have an example is the Anonymous group and even the Syrian Electronic Army group. They are well organized and they can cause very significant problems within networks and government. For state-sponsored hackers, a very good example was the Stuxnet malware, which was created by Americans to damage the Iranian nuclear. So that is state-sponsored. Now, let's learn about some threat hacker tools. And at this point in time, I am going to show you some of the tools because I have some of those tools here. So this is my virtual machine, and I'll open a few of them. For example, I'll open Kali. Let me launch Kali on my virtual machines. I can open Parrot Security. Okay. And maybe I could open the CyberOps Security Onion. Okay. cyber ops extension. I don't know their password. Probably, I think I need to get as password. I've opened Parrot Security is running, and Kali is also running. Okay, I can open also the security workstation. So I know some of them are already up and running. For example, I can see that this is Kali running. And let me just check on Kali is cyber ops. Okay. So the username is there. And there we go. Okay. Yeah, you can see Kali is already opened here. Yeah, this is Kali. And I wanted to show you some of the tools it has, because those are the things we are going to study here. And just go to applications, and here we go. You can see that under information gathering, we have so many tools here, including Dimitri, DNMap clients. We have DNMap, Maltigo is here, NetDiscover, Nmap, POF, Recon, Sparta, ZenMap. Those are information gathering tools. Vulnerability analysis tools here. The Golismero, the Nmap is here, Sparta. Nikto is here. Web hacking tools. Babsuite, Comics, Paros, Clipfish, SQL Map, WebScrab, WPS Scan. A lot of things. Hacking databases, SQL Dick, SQL Ninja, SQL SAS, SQL DAT, so on and so forth. Password hacking tools. John the Ripper, John and Johnny are there. Medusa, Offcrack, and Rainbow Crack, Hashcat, Crunch, hacking wireless networks. Aircrack NG, Chap is there, Cow Party. Kismet, Kismet itself is there, MF Tam, so on and so forth. Reverse engineering tools like Java Snoop, JAD, Flash, some OLEDBG, Radia 2, so on and so forth. Exploitation tools like SQL Map, social engineering, MSF payload, Metasploitable, Armitage, Terminator, sniffing and spoofing tools are there as well. Post-exploitation forensic tools like the foremost reporting tools like the case file, so on and so forth. Yeah. So this is very, very important, again, just for us to be able to learn all these tools. Social engineering, service tools. So this is just one of the operating systems, and this is Kali Linux. And all these tools could actually be launched, and they'll be able to work. They're launched on a command line. And all these tools, you get them for free. Let me look at Parrot here. And this is Parrot. So when you say that these are things you can learn by yourself, I actually mean it, because you can see the tools are right here. Like talking about penetration testing tools, they're all here. Maltigo, Johnny the Ripper, information gathering, vulnerability analysis, web application, exploitation tools, maintenance access for creating backdoors and all that. Post-exploitation, password cracking tools, wireless testing, so many here. Snooping and sniffing, digital forensics, automotive, reverse engineering, reporting tools. So Again, all these tools are actually right here. And if I open the last one, let me just check if I can be able to log into it. Okay. This is security workstation. Okay. Yeah, I think I forgot the password here, but I'm gonna get it pretty soon enough. But I mean, this is just a security workstation, and I'll figure out that laptop there. So what I'm saying is this, guys, these tools are available to everyone. They're open source. Like we had done at the beginning of the class, the most important thing is to do good. If you're caught up by police trying to infiltrate into someone's network, you bear the full responsibility. Not even Kenyatta University will come in because they can be used to do very dangerous things. Okay. So talking about these threat actor tools, and the tools have become very sophisticated, but highly automated. Okay. They require less knowledge to implement, but they do very, very tough things. And so, like I already mentioned, these tools have been evolving. Here are some of them that we have already seen them, like the Rainbow Crack, Medusa, the VS Tumbler for wireless hacking, Aircrack NG, you saw that, Kissmark, network scanning tools, Super Scan, Nmap, you heard me talk about Nmap, packet crafting tools like Yasinia, Netcat, Nemesis, packet sniffers like TCP dump, Wireshark, we have already talked about it, Etacap, DSN, DS sniff, Eta parrots, so on and so forth. Rootkit detectors, I've already talked about these ones, the net filter. Forensic tools like the Helix, Maltigo, you heard me talk about Maltigo. Debugging tools like the GDB, the ADA Pro. We've even talked about hacking operating systems like Kali Linux is here, Parrot, Black Box Linux, encryption tools like the OpenSSH, Tor. Tor is a browser. When you use Tor, and whole communication is protected with very, very foreign VPNs. Vulnerability exploitation tools, social engineering toolkit, NetSparker, vulnerability scanners like the for scanning, bring your own devices, Nemesis, NIPA. So we have a whole set of tools freely available online, and it just needs you to learn how to use them and do good with them. I repeat, do good. Please do not do bad, because when you do bad and you're caught on the right side of the law, you're gonna answer those questions, or else you can eat some uncooked beans and move forward with life. And so that brings us to some attack types. What are some of the types of attacks? We have attacks like eavesdropping attack. Eavesdropping, it means someone is listening to your communication with someone else. Either they copy that information or they're actually listening. They can be able to have a look into the communication between you and someone else. Data modification attacks. These attacks have captured the transmitted network, and they can actually be able to make some modifications on those particular packets. We have IP address spoofing, constructing an IP packet that appears original, but it's actually a fake one. And the same is password-based attacks. And these are attacks that are based majorly on the passwords, and they can either crack it, they can, hack it, so on and so forth, or even delete the password. We have a denial of service attacks, an attack that overwhelms a particular device with so much traffic to prevent that device from performing its duties and responsibilities. We have a man in the middle attack. The attacker positions himself between source and destination of a particular traffic, and they can do so many things, including controlling your communication. There's a compromised key attack, where the public and private keys we're learning today have actually been compromised, and the hacker can actually use it to be able to access some very secured communication. Sniffer tools, we have been using Wireshark for some time now, and so we have sniffer attacks, an attack that is meant to read, monitor, even to capture network as it's being exchanged between any two devices. So now we want to have a brief overview about malware. I know we've already talked about malware before. So now that we have a rough idea of what these tools are, it's important to know that how can you use these tools to gain access to end devices. Yeah. And this is where we have, end devices as a primary target here. Yeah. And so ensure that you at least have some antiviruses, anti-worms, anti-malware. A firewall on your network will go take you a long way, because malware will never announce when it is coming. Okay. And so these malwares can cause very bad things. They can alter data traffic. They can corrupt or even delete files, or sometimes erase the entire hard disk drive. They could cause some computer booting issues, and sometimes they can capture and send very sensitive information to the threat actor. Sometimes they could actually be sending emails from your email account to others when you don't actually intend to send for them emails. And sometimes they just lie very dormant for a very long time within your network. And there exist so many types of malware. We have the adware. Usually this is distributed every time you download a software from the internet. Okay. Ransomware is a type of malware which denies a host devices from accessing the files, the file systems. So what else a ransomware will do is that a hacker can actually encrypt the whole of the hard disk of your computer. When when your hard disk is encrypted, you cannot do anything. And then they go ahead and tell you must pay for some money before we can give you that. So the money you pay is what is called a ransom, and that's why we call it a ransomware. Then you have to kit. Again, these are used by hackers to get some high-level access, like an administrator level access to your computer. And once they have done that, they can do anything. We have spyware, of course, for gathering information to spy on your other devices or network. And you have worms as well. This is a self-replicating program that will always propagate without any user interaction. Now, I want us to talk about some types of network attacks. Very important. We have so many types of network attack, and we can just learn a few of them today. So the first one that I want us to talk about is reconnaissance. From the word reconnaissance, reconnaissance basically means a pre-visit. Okay, if you want to make a pre-visit to a place, then the first thing you always have to do is that you need to know some information about that organization. And that's what we call reconnaissance. It's just an information gathering attack. You discover what their IP addresses are. Do they have a firewall or not? What are their current vulnerabilities? Okay. And so it actually precedes a major attack. And so some of the ways we use to conduct reconnaissance, you can do Google search of the organization. Okay. You could also, determine which IP addresses are active. You can use tools like the Nmap, SuperScan, Angry IP Scan, so forth, to do some port scans. You could also initiate a port scan. and also scan some vulnerabilities that are available in the network using tools like the NIPA or the CoImpact or NISA or something. You can also run a full exploitation tools here by using attacks like the Metasploit or the CoImpact or SQL map, so on and so forth. So this is just an information gathering attack. Then after you get to learn some more information, then you actually need to carry out some password attacks. Now this is our access attacks that are geared towards having authorized access to an organization or unauthorized actually. And so it might not be easy, but you can do things like password attacks. Hackers do that, discovering any kind of a password that we used to use. So you can either do what is called we have an attack on passwords where you continuously guess passwords until you get the correct one, or you can hack into passwords. So that is a brute force attack. And then you have a spoofing attacks. Threat actor attempts to pose as having the IP address of another device. Okay, and the whole process of pretending to be another IP, to be a device with a different IP address, is you actually want to pretend to the other devices that you're actually the correct device, but you're not. Yeah, so there are other attacks like trust exploitation, port redirection, man in the middle that we are going to talk about. But part of spoofing attacks is you can spoof the IP addresses, you can spoof MAC addresses, and you can also spoof the DHCP server. Now, the other attack is called a social engineering attack. This is an attack that takes advantage of human willingness to provide information or to provide help. Very, very important. It takes advantage by manipulating you to provide information or to provide some data. Okay. So they will always make you to also give some confidential information. Some can be done over the phone, or some can be done in person. And they prey on your weakness to help. You want to help anyone who looks miserable or who looks that they need some kind of sympathy. So we have different ways of social engineering attacks. And so the first one is called pretexting. And I'm sure if not all of you, then some of you or most of you have received a random text message telling them to, they have won something and they need to send, or someone has sent you money by mistake and they need you to send them back. So some of these messages are very common. And so it is important that you take very keen attention to pretexting. We have phishing, which is normally done through email. So in phishing, these are emails that are sent to you to be appearing to as if they come from a legitimate person, but they are not. The moment you fall prey to phishing attacks by clicking a link on an email, you actually get hacked, and the hacker can actually gain access to your systems by the mere fact of you clicking that email. Spear phishing attacks is also a kind of phishing attack, but it's targeted on senior members of an organization. Could be the CEO, could be the director general, could be the vice chancellor of a university, or it could also be the director general or the cabinet secretary of a certain organization. We also have the spam emails, often emails that can have some malicious links, which can have malware, or they could basically download some malware to your system. Then we have something we call something for something. This is another social engineer attacks. It's called something for something. I know it in another language. We call it quid pro quo. Okay. So you give me something, you scratch my back, I scratch your back. So a threat actor will say, I want to give you let's say you work at one of the telecommunications companies. So they say, I'm going to give you 10 million Kenya shillings. If you can give me the password to your major servers where you sell airtime or something like that, then you take your 10 million and go and buy land in another country and stay there and keep quiet. It's always something for something. And so it's important to check that anything that is for free in the world that we live in, if you don't pay for it, there's always someone paying for it. So there's always nothing as something for free. Baiting basically, just like we bait fish in the lake or in the water bodies when you go fishing. So the threat actor will leave something that will attract you, something that will bait you basically. And so when you find that particular thing left by the hacker, the hacker is actually trying to lure you into, if it's a flash disk, for example, they can lure you into plugging it into one of the computers in the organization. And the moment you do it in any computer in your network, a malware is going to spread through your organization. That is not a very good one. Okay? Or install some malware on your computer. We have impersonation, whereby you try to be who you are not. You pretend to be someone they're not by gaining some trust of the victim. So you'll come with an overall written Kenya Power company working, and you come to an organization, tell them, I've come to check on your power here, and you check on a few things, but your aim is actually to do something malicious, either install a backdoor rootkit on their network, and then you can always operate on it remotely. So that is impersonation. Tailgating, the threat actor, for example, you're getting into a very, one of the entrances, you need to swap with a card, or you need to scan your thumbprint or fingerprint. And so you wait for someone who is authorized to get in. So they scan themselves and they get in, and before the gate closes, you are already, you're already inside the organization. So that is tailgating, closely following someone as they enter into a secure location because they have authorized access. Shoulder surfing, someone is seated on their workstation and they are doing some of their work. They're maybe using password to log into their account. And so you are there behind them and you are looking at the password character that they're typing there. That is shoulder surfing. Dumpster diving, most organizations do not do shredding. So they will just take pieces of paper that have very crucial information. They squeeze it in their hands and then in their fingers, and then they throw it at the dustbin. So the dumpster diving, the threat actor gets into a building, in the first place he goes to is the dustbin. So they just empty everything in the dustbin, and they can sort it out later. So these are some of the social engineering attacks, and we need to protect ourselves from these social engineering attacks using the social engineering toolkit, which tells you that you should never give your username or passwords to anyone else. Never leave your username and passwords credentials where they can easily be found. Never open emails from untrusted sources. Never release any work-related information on your social media sites. Never use network-related passwords. Always lock or sign out of your computer when you have to leave it unattended. Always report when you see any suspicious individuals within your organization. Please report them to security. And you should always destroy by shredding any kind of confidential information according to the policy of your organization. So those are some mitigation techniques of social engineering. Now we are talking about more attacks here, and the next attack we're talking about is the DOS and DDoS. Okay, where DOS is actually the denial of service. DOS is denial of service, and DDoS is distributed denial of service. Okay, so this basically what DOS does is that DOS overwhelms overwhelms network devices or applications in such a manner that they get interrupted, they can never perform their daily activities. So normally two major types of the denial of service attack. It can either you overwhelm the device with high quantity of traffic to cause that device to either slow down or cause it to completely crash. Or we could also maliciously formatted packets can be sent normally by threat actors so that the device is not able to handle it, and this will cause the device to run very slow or even to crash. And so DOS is a major risk because they interrupt communications. They cause significant loss of time and money, okay? And so since DOS comes from one hacker's device, if you can conduct a DOS that is coming from multiple sources, and that is what is called the distributed denial of service attacks, the DDoS, okay? So a distributed denial of service attack is similar to DDoS, only that it now originates from very multiple and coordinated sources, multiple and coordinated sources. We have vulnerabilities within the IP protocol. Spoofing is always one of the major ones. And you know that the IP as a protocol, whether it's version 6 or version 4, normally it does not validate whether the IP address is actually from a secure source or not, okay? And so for this reason, hackers can normally send packets using spoofed IP addresses. And so this is where understanding the different fields within the IPv4 and IPv6, as we did in Scene 1, matters a lot, right? So you need to learn those fields so that you know which parts are the vulnerable parts. And that makes us to have several attacks within the IP. We have ICMP attacks that take advantage of the ping and trace routes, like the ping of death and all that, or amplification and replication attacks, where the threat actor attempts to prevent legitimate users from accessing the information services. We have spoofing of our MAC and IP addresses, that's still there. We have man-in-the-middle attacks. Threat actor positions themselves between any two hackers, and they actually try to monitor, capture, or even control the information. Finally, session hijacking. From the word, you take advantage of a session, either through the man-in-the-middle attack. You can hijack certain TCP session or an ICMP session, so on and so forth. So an example of the application reflection, you can see that the hacker is actually here. The hacker here sends an attack to this 7 PCs over here to infect them with malware. Then now the hacker becomes what is called a command and control center and sends instruction to all these laptops that have been infected with malware, and they are all sent now to attack the victim device. So the last time, the target was actually a victim machine here, but we actually we amplify this attack from 1 to 7 devices, and then we reflect the attack back to one device. So it's very easy for the target to crash or even to totally lose connectivity from the network. Talking about UDP and TCP, we look at one of the most commonly attacked part of the network is the TCP three-way handshake. Remember the SYN, ACK, and FLAP. SYN, ACK, and ACK. This is TCP three-way handshake. We all know that if the TCP three-way handshake is not complete, then the devices are not actually going to do what? They are not going to exchange any information, any TCP information. So if the TCP IP is not complete, then that's a very big problem because no data is actually going to be transmitted. And that's why we have attacks like the TCP SYN flag attack. And the basic function of this attack is to prevent the TCP three-way handshake from ever completing. We should never have the SYN, ACK, and ACK. That is the objective of this attack. And so the hacker will send SYN request to the server, okay? The server will send a SYN ACK back to the hacker's laptop or computer, but the hacker will never complete the ACK. So the hacker will send the SYN to the server will send a SYN ACK, but the hacker will never complete it with an ACK to acknowledge that connection to be completed. And so it keeps the server so busy so that if any other legitimate users, like the gentleman seated here at number 3, if they try to send any SYN messages to the server is actually busy replying back to the device. So you actually, prevent the TCP three-way handshake from ever completing. As part of IP services, the other place of attack is the ARP, which is Address Resolution Protocol. I don't know whether you still remember about ARP. We say that ARP, every PC has an ARP table. So if I just do ARP space -A, and I can see my ARP table here. The ARP table is always composed of the IP addresses and the MAC addresses, IP and MAC addresses. And these ones are devices that are connected to this network, and this device has been trying to communicate to them. So the IP address of those devices are here, and their MAC addresses are actually here. So when we talk of ARP poisoning, ARP cache poisoning or cache, what we are actually doing is that you want to poison that table, the ARP table we've just seen. It's the same as the ARP cache. That's the other name. So you want to store, since we know that you must store the IP address and the MAC address of devices in your network, you decide to store the wrong MAC address and the correct IP address so that the information in the ARP cache or the ARP cache is not accurate. Okay, that is the objective of this ARP cache, ARP cache poisoning attack, so that that layer 2 we communicate using MAC addresses. So that, let's say you wanted to learn the MAC address of the router together its IP address, so you send an ARP request to request for the IP and MAC addresses of the router. So you send that ARP request, and the router doesn't reply fast. The first device to respond with an ARP reply is actually the hacker's laptop, which is type of attack is clearly understood. One of the major attacks in our network is the DNS attacks, and DNS, which is domain name system or service, is basically an automated service which converts usernames to IPs or IPs to usernames. Okay, and so having a service like NS lookup, which can actually manually query our MAC address. So I can query what is the IP address of Microsoft.com. It has several of them here. Most of them are actually there. IP address of Google.com. And you can see it has both IPv6 and 4 here. Okay. Facebook.com. And you can see the IPv4 and IPv6 address here. So what DNS does, that is actually the work. Currently I'm manually querying my DNS server. So since DNS is that which we cannot do without in our networks, by the way. Every time you visit a website, what helps you to actually access the resources of the website? By converting that name you're typing, cisco.com, netaka.com, into a certain IP address, and the IP is now used to initiate an access to the server. So DNS is behind all this. And so attacking the DNS server of any organization, that is the greatest damage you can ever do to that organization, because nothing is going to be happening. And so attacks on, securing of the DNS server is one of the most overlooked practices, but it is the most crucial operation that every network admin needs to put into consideration, okay? And so many types of DNS attacks exist, including the DNS open resolve attack, stealth attacks, domain shadowing, tunneling, so on and so forth. So I want to look at a few of them on the DNS stealth attacks. That basically these ones, their work is to hide the identity of threat actors, okay? And so the first one is called the fast flags, where this is whereby we have a DNS domain name like cisco.com or netaka.com, which has an IP behind it. The problem is that the IP address is continuously changing, but the name remains the same. That is funny, eh? So this type of attack, it quickly changes the IP address. So you can never know. If you try to check the IP address of cisco.com now, and after a few minutes, you'll actually get different IP addresses. So it is actually used to hide the malicious servers from being detected. Those are malicious hacking servers. You can't even know the exact IP for it. We have double flags. And this is where now we are changing both of them. You keep on changing host names and IP addresses, the domain names. At one point, it's called, alan.com. At another time, it's called mac.com. And at another point, it's called microsoft.com or google.com. And the way the names are changing is the way the IP are changing. And this increases the difficulty of identifying what is the source of the attack, because this is one of those that attacks are used so much. And then we have the DAG, the domain generation algorithm. Here now, the randomly generate domain names, which can also be used to confuse the hacker. So you keep on changing the domain names. So the first one was changing IP addresses. The second one is changing both of them, IP and domain name mapping. And then the third one is changing only the domain names. We have attacks on DHCP servers. And DHCP normally has two attacks. We have DHCP starvation attack, and we have DHCP spoofing attack. I know that we have studied before the DORA, the DHCP discover, DHCP offer, DHCP request, and DHCP acknowledge. These are basically different attacks which are actually being used to, these are the steps that are used between a DHCP client and DHCP server to be able to acquire IP addresses within the organization. So it's important to note that the DORA is actually a very important mnemonym for learning. So to learn about the attacks on DHCP, we have DHCP spoofing attacks, which basically you first start by starving the device. And so what you do here is that you send fake request to the DHCP server until the DHCP server has offered or has exhausted all the IP addresses. Okay, the DHCP server has exhausted all the IP addresses by sending fake request from the hacker, so that the DHCP server no longer has any IP information remaining. So the hacker takes this advantage and spoofs his laptop to look like a DHCP server, and that's what we call a DHCP spoofing attack. And so the DHCP server of the hacker will be offering IP addresses to DHCP clients, only that it will be offering fake IP addresses. And the server is called a rogue DHCP server. It will give wrong default gateway, wrong DNS server, wrong IP address, wrong subnet mask, so that when All right. So let's talk about, we just have 2 more things to talk about, and we should be done probably by around 7 o'clock. Let's learn about some best practices, security best practices. What are some of the things that you should be able to do to be able to maintain security within your organization? Of course, we know some of them. Organizations should invest in some firewall. That is not one of the cheapest things to buy. But as we shall be learning the next chapter, where we'll be learning how to configure a router to become a firewall by configuring what we call access control list. There are some other ideas that I could give you today. Of course, we have talked about SSH, and we'll be configuring SSH soon enough. So protecting the network requires a lot of things. Protect information, protect data, protect even the people. And so there are 3 objectives of network security. We call it the CIA, the confidentiality, which means only authorized individuals should have access to any sensitive information. And we ensure confidentiality by using encryption or cryptographic algorithms like AES. Then we have the second objective is integrity, whereby protecting data from being altered in an unauthorized way. So protect data from being altered or being changed, and we normally use the hashing algorithms like the SHA and MD5 to be able to protect the network for integrity. So apart from confidentiality, integrity, we have the last one is called availability, where the authorized users within the network need to have uninterrupted access to important resources and data within the network, including redundant services and all that. So confidentiality, only authorized people should access. Integrity, data being transmitted should remain unchanged or unaltered by using hashing algorithms. And then availability, authorized users must have continuous uninterrupted access to resources within the network. And of course, that in terms of security within an organization, it's also important to note that there are other security devices which can be implemented to provide some security within an organization's network. And that includes VPNs, virtual private networks, the firewall, the ASA, basically meaning the adaptive security appliance firewall, the IPS, which is intrusion prevention system, and it has a sister called IDS, which is intrusion detection system. And then we have the ESA, email security appliance, and the WSA is web security appliance. We have the AAA server, the authentication, authorization, and accounting servers. And this also includes hardening your devices with passwords and encryptions and all that, and ensuring that using SSH to secure data as it travels along the network. So security is a whole lot of things. And, just having a firewall might not be enough. You might have to even training employees within an organization. And I know that so many network people who don't have a security person in their organization, you end up doubling as a security person and as a network person, and you get to learn a lot. So this is an IPS here, an example, intrusion prevention system. An IPS is basically not like a firewall, basically, but all traffic must pass through the IPS device, and the IPS device has sensors which can be able to detect and prevent some malware or viruses from going through the network, and can drop always those packets. Now, other security devices, I've already talked about them, but just to put more emphasis is that to filter only email traffic against any malicious files, the email security appliance, very, very important for email information. for email traffic, filter it. And the email security appliance is a Cisco device that normally are protected by feeds from the Cisco Talos system, which gives threat intelligence as done by Cisco after every 5 minutes. Then for all the web traffic, we also have a device that is really only focused on the web traffic, and that is the web security appliance, which is a mitigation technology for any web-based threats. Okay, and it combines advanced malware protection, controls, reporting, so on and so forth. So these are very great devices that can actually be used as network devices to protect your network. Now, as part of learning about security, we cannot completely finish learning about security without talking about the last part of this conversation, and we call that cryptography. We call it cryptography. And so it's important for us to note that cryptography is such an important part of security, and that's why we need to have some basic knowledge about cryptography. And for today, we will be learning that organizations must always provide some support in terms of securing data as it travels across different links to other organizations. And this can be your own internal traffic or even traffic coming from outside of the organization, okay? And for secure communications within organizations, there must be integrity, and we are calling that data integrity, ensuring that data is not altered as it's transmitted over the network. So use SSH here. Use the SHA. These are hashing algorithms, like SHA secure hashing algorithm, or the message digest 5, the MD5, as hashing algorithms to prevent any data transmitted over the network from being altered or modified. We have origin authentication, which provides a guarantee that the messages being transmitted are not forgery, and they actually come from whom it says it come. And we use the hash message authentication code. These are authentication protocols. We have data confidentiality, which uses encryption algorithms to guarantee that only authorized users can have access to information. And like I said, we use encryption algorithms, which are divided into two, symmetric and asymmetric, and we will talk about them in a few. And finally, is data non-repudiation, which basically guarantees that the sender cannot refuse or repudiate the validity of a message that they have sent themselves. Okay. Yeah, so this relies on the fact that only the sender has unique characteristic or digital signature to send that message. Very, very important. Okay. And if you didn't know, cryptography is used almost everywhere. And if you didn't know this and you use WhatsApp, sometimes you see on WhatsApp that end-to-end messaging is encrypted. If you have seen that on WhatsApp, make sure the next time you see that notice, click on that particular notice, and it will actually open an encryption policy document for WhatsApp, and you'll see some of the words that we are actually learning here. All right. All communications needs to be, and that is very, very important. So talking about the hashing algorithms, which prevent integrity or are used to ensure integrity, we have different types of hashing algorithms. We have the MD5. We have, MD5 is a bit weaker because it's a legacy protocol. It just a one-way function that produces 128-bit hashed message. Then we have the SHA version 1, which is the secure hashing algorithm. Very similar to MD5 function, but it creates about 160 bit hashed message, slightly lower than MD5, but it has its own flaws as well. We have the version 2 SHA, or the SHA version 2, which is a secure hashing algorithm version 2. And this is a bit stronger. This one creates from 2 to 4 bits, 256, 384 bits, or 512, 384, all the way to 512, and these ones are the next generation algorithms used whenever possible to ensure hashing. So when hashing, normally we use it to detect any changes within your data. We can't use it to protect or to guard against those changes. You'll just use them to know if a change occurred, but it will not protect you from having those changes. And that means that anyone can actually compute any kind of hash and they can have the correct hash function. Therefore, hashing is actually presenting a vulnerability in the man-in-the-middle attacks. And so we need to get something that will secure people from accessing that. And that is what we call confidentiality. In confidentiality, we have two classes of encryption which are used to ensure confidentiality. So we have symmetric encryption algorithms and asymmetric. So we start with the symmetric algorithms. An example of symmetric is the DES, data encryption standards. We have triple DES, where you encrypt the data 3 times. And we have AES, which is advanced encryption standards. And then we have the asymmetric algorithms, which includes the RSA. When you are configuring SSH, sometimes use that command, crypto key generate RSA. So that RSA is actually names of 3 gentlemen who came up with this algorithm. And that is Rivest, Sharma, and Adleman. And we also have the PKI as another algorithm, the public key infrastructure. And so in terms of getting the difference between symmetric and asymmetric, we can check on some of those differences here. So the first thing to note is that symmetric normally uses the same key for encryption and decryption. Very, very important. But in asymmetric, they use different keys, public and private keys for encryption and decryption keys. The key lengths of symmetric are a bit shorter, between 40 to 256 bits, but the key lengths of the asymmetric are a bit longer, from 512 to 4096. Symmetrics are much faster. Symmetric are much faster, and the asymmetric are a bit slower. Okay, they're slower because the computation is tasking because of the long key sizes. The symmetric encryption normally is used for encrypting very large data sizes, like traffic in a VPN is traffic from one organization or one device to another device. So bulk data can be encrypted using symmetric. Very quick transactions like HTTP traffic, bulk transactions, we do that using the asymmetric. And asymmetric is lighter, long keys but lighter, and uses different keys for encryption and decryption, and they're a bit slower. Okay. Now, in terms of the symmetric algorithms, like I told you, we have the DES, which is a legacy algorithm. This is the data encryption standards. It's a legacy, and it's no longer being used. But we have a close associate, which is a newer version of a DES, which is called triple DES. And so here the encryption is actually repeated 3 times. Okay, it's a bit trustworthy when implemented using very short key lifetimes. Of course, we have AES, which is advanced encryption standards. This is very common for wireless networks. We use the AES a lot, and it's actually a very good one, more secure than the triple DES. Otherwise, we have the SEAL, software optimized encryption algorithm, which is a faster alternative symmetric encryption than DES, triple DES, and even AES. and it's a lower impact on the CPU. That is one of the advantages compared to other software-based algorithms. And the last one is called the RC, the reverse ciphers, developed by the Ron Rivest. And this is a very common one for securing web traffic in the SSL and TLS, that is the secure socket layer, and the transport layer security. So this particular method here is a very good one, especially for web traffic. It's the algorithm that works behind what we popularly known as HTTPS. Okay, and HTTPS uses TLS and SSL. Very good one there as a protocol. So take note that RC is actually a very important one. Now, we have some asymmetric algorithms here. We have some asymmetric algorithms here. And here we are basically talking about protocols, algorithms like the IKE, Internet Key Exchange, which is very instrumental in IP security, VPNs, IPsec, and SSL, the secure socket layer, which is also normally implementing TLS. TLS is the current one. SSL is actually being phased away. The asymmetric example of algorithms are still implemented in the SSH, which is for secure remote access. And for email communications, to increase security, we use the PGP, the pretty good privacy. Okay. Now, it's important to note that more and more asymmetric algorithms exist, like the Diffie-Hellman is here. We have, with the longer and longer keys for private and public keys. We have the DSS and DSA. This is for digital signatures, again. Very important algorithms, the digital signature standard and the digital signature algorithm. Of course, RSA here for Rivers, Sharma, and Adelman as encryption algorithms for generation of encryption keys, and in SSH we use it largely a lot for, can also be used for electronic commerce protocols, and it's a very secure, given that it has very long and up-to-date implementation keys. Others, we also have the Algamal, which is an asymmetric key encryption algorithm. And the encrypted message now becomes very big, and that is a big deal for the Algamal. Okay. And then lastly, we have the elliptical curve algorithm, which are again used for the public and private key encryptions. Very important for that. Now, these asymmetric algorithms are taking the Diffie-Hellman, the DH, as an example. It has a wide variety of uses, and one of them is for exchanging data securely in a VPN, IP security VPN especially. TLS and TS and SSL usage in encrypting data within the HTTPS, and SSH data exchange, very important. And it uses very large numbers in its calculations, but they are extremely slower normally. Now, since the Diffie-Hellman is an asymmetric mathematical algorithm where two computers normally generate an identical shared key without having to communicate before, normally the new shared key is never actually exchanged between the sender and the receiver. And I actually want to demonstrate that using some set of colors here, and I'll show you how Diffie-Hellman actually works. So looking at this particular demonstration here, two computers need to generate unique keys and use them to find keys that are not known to them, but very secure for public and private keys. So what happens is that we have a lady called Alice here, and we have Bob. All right. And so Bob and Alice are going to agree on a color. Let's say they choose this color. This color can be what? This color, I think it looks like a yellow. Forgive me if I don't know colors, because it's not our portion here. So let's give this color name. Let's say this color is because this is red. This is blue. Where's Leonida? Leonida, which color is this one? The first one here. Can't be suffering and you're here.
It's yellow.
It's yellow, eh?
Yeah.
Today I'll sleep very well. At least I know one. This color. Thank you. So let's say this is a yellow color. So Alice and Bob are going to agree on a color. Let's say the yellow color. They say, everyone, let's have a yellow color in our container. And then Alice and Bob, they decide that let each one of them choose a second color, which is unique. That must be the secret color for Alice must be a secret color for Bob. I mean, they should be different. Everyone must have their own secret color. So Alice chooses red. Bob chooses blue. Okay. So Alice and Bob, they mix their common color yellow with their secret colors. So Alice will get his yellow plus the red, and he should get a brown color here. Bob, at the other side, will also pick the yellow plus his secret color, which is blue, and Bob will get green. And then at that point, Alice and Bob, they exchange their private color, which is a combination of the secret and the agreed upon color. So Alice gives Bob his private color, which is currently brown, and Bob gives color his private color, which is currently green. Okay. And then they say, let's have the private color that you have received. Take your secret color and add it to the private color you have received. So Alice adds his secret color, which is red, to green, and gets a color here. That color, if you ask me, I don't know what it is. Bob also takes the private color from Alice and adds it to his secret color. Okay, it should be a secret color. Yeah, this word should be secret, not private. So adds it to the secret color, which is blue, and Bob gets a color. So they have the same result, but what they don't know is their secret colors here. So which means this key, this becomes two keys, a common public key, but for Alice to decrypt this color or to authenticate using this particular public key, he must only use his secret color, which is red, to unlock that particular color there. The same thing, if this is now the public color common to both of them, if Alice sends a message to Bob, that message is having a public key, which is this color, then Bob must only use his private key to be able to read that message, to decrypt and read that particular message. And that is how Diffie-Hellman actually works, like I mentioned to you guys. So two computers, they generate an identical shared key without having communicated before, okay? And the new shared key is never actually exchanged between the sender and the receiver. So that is very, very important. And that's how they are able to create keys that will be used by encryption, some of these as encryption algorithms. So we were just trying to simplify, what actually normally happens. And so this Diffie-Hellman actually marks the end to our class today. And tomorrow is a Thursday, actually, and I think we shall be having our first class for configuring a router to act as a firewall tomorrow, and that is what is called an ACL, Access Control Lists. An ACL is the next big thing that we'll be talking about to be able to figure out how can we be able to, and we learn the concept in chapter 4, and then we learn how to configure it in chapter 5. So an ACL is a big thing. If you learned about the wildcard masks that we did learn about in configuring LSPF, please, we will still need that knowledge of wildcard mask in SCL. So that's the end of this class, and I think tomorrow we will continue from there to be able to learn about SCLs.